Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. After 15 years in the Navy, I came home to revive my father's forgotten marina, only to face a war I never expected. Not with pirates or storms, but with an HOA president named Karen, hell-bent on destroying everything I rebuilt. She picked the wrong sailor to fight. I spent 15 years in the Navy, watching the world from steel decks and salt-sprayed railings, but nothing ever felt as permanent as the marina my father once ran back in Old Shore. After his passing, that place sat neglected, like a rusted anchor half buried in silt. Locals forgot it existed, the city forgot it existed, but I didn't. And when I finally hung up my uniform and came back home to South Carolina, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the next chapter of my life. Buying Old Shore Marina wasn't cheap. $3.8 million to be exact, and that was after months of negotiating with the city. But the title is mine now. All of it. The docks, the offices, the fuel station, the rundown boat sheds, and every greasy, sun-faded bolt of the infrastructure. I didn't just inherit property, I reclaimed legacy. I moved into a modest house not far from the marina, tucked between marshland and a narrow service road. It's the kind of place where you can hear foghorns in the distance and see dolphins playing before tourists do. Quiet, but not isolated. From my backyard, I can watch boats coming in with the tide and leaving with the wind. My own boat, the Sea Justice, is docked at slip number 4, a 42-foot beauty I picked up from a guy in Norfolk, named it as a wink to my past life and current intentions. Fixing up the marina became my full-time project. I didn't just slap paint on wood and call it good. We gutted the dock office, installed a new fuel system, built a small cafe where the old bait shop used to be. I brought in a couple of guys I served with. They know boats, they know discipline, and they work like demons when given a goal. In 6 months, Old Shore went from ghost pier to a thriving little hub again. Fishing charters, weekend sailors, even a few live aboards. But just up the hill from the marina sits Bay Point Lakes, a preened, picture-perfect HOA neighborhood filled with oversized homes and undersized patients. You know the type. Neatly trimmed bushes, mailboxes that all match, and residents who think wind should ask permission before blowing. That's where I first heard her. Karen Sander, 55, HOA president, former real estate agent from New Jersey, current pain in my ass. She made her entrance with a complaint. The marina's fueling station emits odor, she said. It's disturbing the air quality. I nearly laughed. Lady, you live on the coast. Fish smells are part of the ambiance, but I kept it civil. Explained politely that the fueling system was up to code, the EPA-certified tanks had been inspected, and, oh yeah, her HOA had no jurisdiction here. She didn't like that. The next week, she left a note taped to my marina gate, handwritten slanted cursive that read like it came from a disappointed nun. Community standards require visual harmony. The boat sheds are offensive to the view. I ignored it, so she came in person. Standing at the edge of my dock in white capri pants and designer sunglasses, she pointed at the Sea Justice like it had personally insulted her dog. That boat blocks our view of the water, she said. Our water, I asked. I represent Bay Point. These docks fall within our visual domain. I swear I thought she made that up on the spot. I explained, again, that the marina and surrounding waterfront are commercially zoned and privately owned, that she nor her HOA had any legal claim to so much as a puddle within my perimeter. She didn't argue. She smirked. We'll see, she said, and turned on her overpriced heels. That's when I knew. She wasn't going to stop with passive-aggressive notes or empty lectures. I'd seen that look before, same as officers who think rank gives them divine right. This woman believed rules were for other people, that everything she saw belonged to her if only someone would enforce it. She wanted a fight. Well, she just picked the wrong sailor. The sun was barely over the horizon when it happened. I was standing on the dock with a mug of black coffee watching the tide roll in when I saw her, Karen, arms crossed, lips pursed like she'd bitten into a lemon made of taxpayer resentment. She stood up on the bluff that overlooked the marina, her phone out snapping photos of the Sea Justice as if she'd caught a criminal act in progress. I didn't wave. I didn't even blink. I just sipped my coffee and waited for whatever nonsense she had brewing. It didn't take long. About an hour later, a blue and white cruiser pulled up by the gate. 2 officers stepped out. One young, fresh out of academy by the look of him, the other older, with the expression of a man who's handled too many neighborhood disputes involving pool noise and garbage cans. Karen practically sprinted to meet them. "That's the boat," she barked, pointing at the Sea Justice like it was trafficking endangered dolphins. "It's illegally docked. It's violating HOA marine ordinances and visually polluting the community shoreline." I came down the dock slow, calm, hands visible. When dealing with cops, especially as a tall man in cargo shorts with a military bearing, it's better to let them see you're not the problem. "Morning, officers," I said. "What seems to be the issue?" The younger one looked at Karen, then back at me. "We received a complaint about an unauthorized vessel?" "Right," I said. "Let me clear this up real quick." I walked them over to the office, unlocked the door, and pulled the manila folder from the cabinet. Deed, business license, zoning documents, coastal authority registration, slip assignments, and the most recent marina inspection report. I laid them out like playing cards. "This marina is privately owned," I said. "Bought it from the city 7 months ago. I own the land, the slips, the docks, and the water access rights. That boat," I pointed to the Sea Justice through the window, "is registered under my name and docked at my own property." The older officer read the documents carefully. The younger one tried to look like he was reading too. Karen stood by the window, arms flailing like she was trying to flag down a lifeboat. "But you can't see the water from Bay Point anymore," she snapped. "That vessel is obstructing the community's view. The HOA guidelines state—" "Ma'am," the older officer cut in, "this is not HOA property. You said the boat was illegally docked. It's not. This is a private marina, zoned commercial." "He's within his rights." Karen's face did something interesting, a twitch, then a freeze, like her entire expression got jammed in traffic. "I represent over 100 families," she hissed. "We have a right to clean, unobstructed coastline." "You don't have a right to someone else's property," I said flatly. The officers looked at each other. The younger one muttered something about wasting departmental resources. The older one turned to Karen. "Ma'am, unless you have a court order, we can't enforce HOA rules outside HOA jurisdiction, and this gentleman clearly owns the marina. I suggest you take this up with your association." Karen didn't leave right away. She lingered by the gate like a stray cat, waiting for someone to open the door again. Then she stomped off, heels clacking on the asphalt, swearing into her phone about bringing this to council. After they left, I went back to my boat, untied her lines, and took the Sea Justice out for a loop around the bay. Not because I had to, just because I could. As I throttled up, the wind in my face and the open horizon ahead, I caught a glimpse of Bay Point on the hill. Tiny houses, tiny mines, all tucked away behind their fences and bylaws. I knew this wasn't over. That woman wasn't going to let this drop, but at least now she knew who she was dealing with. I thought maybe, just maybe, showing her the legal documents would put an end to it. That with the police stepping in and confirming I was in the clear, Karen would go back to pruning hedges and writing passive-aggressive HOA newsletters. I was wrong. I underestimated the ferocity of entitled boredom. I underestimated her. 2 days later, just after I'd finished fixing a water pressure issue in one of the dock bathrooms, I stepped outside and saw a small group of people marching down the path toward the marina entrance. It was like a HOA-themed parade, matching polo shirts, homemade signs flapping in the breeze, and Karen front and center carrying a laminated clipboard like it was a weapon. The signs read things like, "Save our shoreline," and "Marina equals pollution." One lady even had a handmade poster with a cartoon drawing of a sinking boat and the word "threat" in bold red letters. It would have been funny if it wasn't so damn irritating. They stopped just outside the marina gates. I watched from the upper deck of the dock office as Karen raised her voice. "Community members have a right to peaceful enjoyment of their surroundings," she called out like she was on a courthouse step. "We won't allow commercial interests to destroy our ecosystem and lifestyle." Some of the people behind her looked half-committed, like they were there more for the muffins Karen probably offered than out of real conviction. One guy was clearly filming for Facebook Live, narrating like this was the final standoff at the Alamo. I came down calmly, wiping my hands on a rag. "Morning," I said. "Y'all really taking time out of your Thursday to protest a legal business that's been here longer than your HOAs existed?" Karen stepped forward. "We are here exercising our First Amendment rights. This marina is disruptive, noisy, dangerous, and toxic to the community's vision." "To your vision," I corrected. "It obstructs the view of the water," she snapped. "It brings tourists into a residential area. There are diesel fumes. There's boat waste." "We have proper waste handling protocols, Karen. The marina is regulated, inspected, certified. You don't belong here," she said. "None of this belongs here." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about boats or fuel or noise. This was about power. Karen saw herself as a guardian of some imaginary kingdom, and I'd set up shop on what she believed was sacred ground. They left after about 20 minutes of yelling at nobody in particular. I made a point of grilling some shrimp on a small propane stove right near the dock, just enough scent to reach their noses as they trudged back up the hill. But that night, things got serious. I was locking up around 11, doing a final walk through of the piers, when I noticed something off. One of the sailboats, a sleek 30-footer I'd just assigned to a local charter operator, was listing slightly, tugging at its line wrong. I walked over, flipped on the dock light, and saw it immediately. The bowline had been sliced clean through. The stern line was barely holding. Someone had cut the mooring lines. My stomach dropped. I checked 3 other boats, same thing, lines either severed or halfway sliced. Had I come out an hour later, they could have drifted into the rocks or smashed into each other. Thousands in potential damage. Lives, even, if someone had been sleeping aboard. I called the police. They came out, took my statement, logged the damage. One of the officers, same guy from the first visit, shook his head. "This is deliberate. You've pissed someone off." "No," I said. "Someone pissed me off." The next morning, I pulled every favor I had. Called up an old buddy from the Navy, who now did private security installs. By that evening, I had 6 high-def motion cameras installed at key points around the marina: entry gates, dock ends, fuel station, and boat slips. Infrared, night vision, time-stamped, the works. I also put up signs everywhere: 24-hour video surveillance. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I reviewed the previous night's footage. At around 2:14 a.m., 2 figures crept into frame, both in dark hoodies. One was short, limping slightly. The other moved with military precision, staying in the shadows. They cut the lines, disappeared out of frame, faces obscured. But both were wearing black windbreakers with the HOA logo embroidered on the back. Subtle. Brilliant. I turned the footage over to the cops. They logged it, but didn't promise miracles. "We'll investigate," they said, and I believe them, as much as you believe anyone in a town where the HOA board throws bigger weight than the mayor. The story made local buzz. A fishing captain posted on Nextdoor, "Vandals target Old Shore Marina. Why sabotage your own town's heritage?" Comments exploded. Some defended the HOA. Others called it terrorism in polos. The line was drawn. The mood at the marina changed after that. Clients started asking if it was safe to dock. Charter bookings dipped. I could feel the pressure Karen wanted. The slow squeeze. She didn't need to win in court or with police. She just had to make it painful enough to make me fold. But she didn't know me. This wasn't just business. This was my father's legacy, my home, my future. And if she wanted war, I'd make damn sure she got more than she bargained for. There's a special kind of tired that comes from realizing someone's trying to ruin your life in slow motion. Not with one blow, but with 1,000 paper cuts. Karen didn't need to break in again or cut more dock lines. No, her next move was smarter and meaner. She pivoted from sabotage to strategy, bureaucracy, red tape, political maneuvering. And damn, she was good at it. It started with an envelope taped to the front door of the Marina office. Petition to reassess the legality and environmental compliance of Old Shore Marina. Neatly typed, signed, supposedly, by 150 residents of Bay Point Lakes. It was addressed to the City Council and carbon copied to the Zoning Board, Environmental Commission, and local press. The first paragraph read like a hit job. The Old Shore Marina represents a significant ecological threat to the local marine environment and has failed to meet the standards expected by adjacent communities. The second paragraph accused the marina of illegal commercial expansion, unregulated fuel storage, and, my personal favorite, visual degradation of the waterfront aesthetic. I spent an hour cross-referencing the names. At least 20 of them were repeats. 12 were obviously fake. Samantha Boatman, Captain Shoreline. Really? I laughed, but it tasted bitter. Later that week, I heard rumblings from the city clerk's office. Turns out Karen had personally delivered the petition in heels and a pastel blazer, giving an impassioned speech about how unchecked capitalism is eroding the soul of the Bay. She'd also brought along a man who claimed to be an environmental scientist with credentials from Atlantic Ecological Review Group. I looked them up. Their website was a one-page Wix template with 2 stock photos and no verifiable staff. The dominoes began to fall. First came the fire inspection. A city marshal showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand, looking for outdated extinguishers and improperly stored fuel containers. I passed, but barely. Had to upgrade one extinguisher to a newer model and relabel a diesel barrel. Small stuff. Then the health inspector, citing public complaints about water contamination from food preparation near the Dock Cafe. Again, nothing stuck, but it took a full day and cost me $400 in compliance paperwork. Next was the zoning department. They claimed there was a discrepancy between my property line and the newly updated GIS map from 3 months ago. Suddenly, there were questions about whether the outer slips extended into shared community access space, a term so vague it sounded like it was invented just to harass me. I started tracking everything. I built a spreadsheet, date of visit, department, name of inspector, nature of complaint, outcome. You know what I found? Over 2 weeks, I'd been hit with 7 different inspections or compliance requests, more than I'd had in the previous 6 months combined. Meanwhile, word around town shifted. Some business owners pulled back their partnerships. A local kayak rental I'd worked with for years quietly told me they were reassessing their affiliations. Even the bait supplier started hesitating on bulk deliveries. Karen wasn't just targeting me, she was choking the ecosystem around me. But the real gut punch came from an unexpected direction: taxes. I received a letter from the county assessor's office. They were re-examining the property's valuation due to reported commercial expansion and potential zoning infractions. My tax bill, already steep, was projected to increase by 28%. If it stuck, that would put real pressure on my cash flow. I slammed the paper down and stared out at the water. The sea justice bobbed gently, indifferent to the war happening on land. I thought about my dad, about the old days when this marina was a neighborhood staple. Not some battleground between a megalomaniac in pearls and a guy just trying to keep his head above water. That's when I realized I couldn't fight this with duct tape and sarcasm. I needed help. I called Julia Grace. Julia's an old friend, former federal prosecutor turned private attorney who now specialized in civil litigation and what she calls petty tyrants in suburban kingdoms. We hadn't talked in years, but after I sent her the documents, video footage, and my spreadsheet, she replied within an hour. This is war, and I love wars with paperwork. We met the next morning in my office. She showed up in jeans and a leather briefcase. All business. She laid out a plan. We'd go on the offensive. Step 1, she said. We send cease and desist letters to every agency involved, citing harassment and abuse of process. Step 2, we file for a restraining order against further coordinated inspections without formal cause. Step 3, we gather evidence to expose the petition's fraudulent signatures and the conflict of interest with Karen's expert. She smirked, then added, and Step 4, we get ready to sue the HOA. Not just her, the whole board. I nodded. Good. I want her to feel what it's like when someone fights back. She looked out of the window at the protest sign still stuck in the dirt beyond the gate. Oh, she will. Julia didn't waste time. By noon that Monday, she'd fired off 3 cease and desist letters, one to the Bay Point Lakes HOA, one to the city zoning office, and one directly to the email inbox of the so-called Atlantic Ecological Review Group. The language was sharp, enough to peel paint off a dock post. She cited specific harassment statutes, civil code violations, and even threw in a Supreme Court precedent just for flavor. I've seen torpedoes do less damage, but this wasn't just about sending threats. Julia wanted to build a legal case that would hold up under scrutiny, and for that, she needed hard evidence. Over the next week, we began digging. The first target was Karen's petition. Julia subpoenaed the original filing with the city council. We cross-referenced the signatures with public records, property databases, even social media. Out of the 150 names, at least 42 didn't match any known resident of Bay Point. Another dozen were obviously fake. Same handwriting, same pen, signed on the same day. A few were dead people, literally. One of them had a gravestone down in Riverside Cemetery. Then there were the so-called experts. The Atlantic Ecological Review Group turned out to be a shell company registered to a UPS store address in New Jersey. Its sole listed employee? A man named Glenn Sander, Karen's husband. Julia laughed when she read the registration form. "You've got to be kidding me." She tried to pass off her husband as an independent environmental authority. "Technically," I said, "he is an expert in bullsh—" "Let me stop you there," she cut in, grinning. "We're going to bury them." The next domino fell when a disgruntled HOA board member, a man named Phil Hargrave, contacted me privately. He'd been on the board for 5 years and was sick of Karen's reign of terror. Over coffee in my office, he showed me internal emails where Karen had authorized thousands of dollars in legal expenses without a community vote, all aimed at neutralizing the marina problem. She'd even pressured residents into signing the petition by claiming their property values were under direct threat and that terrorist charters were operating from my docks. "Terrorist charters," I repeated, deadpan. He nodded. That was the phrasing in one of her emails. She said your fishing boats could be harboring undocumented operatives. I nearly choked on my coffee. Julia took all of it. The petition data, the fake expert reports, the HOA expense records, the smear emails, and compiled it into what she called the nuke binder. It was thick enough to stop a bullet, and it was headed straight for court. But before we filed, we dropped the hammer. We sent the entire binder, along with a formal complaint, to the city council. Julia personally delivered it to each member, along with a summary letter explaining the extent of Karen's misconduct. She didn't mince words. Fraud, defamation, harassment, and the malicious abuse of civic infrastructure to destroy a legal business. The fallout was instant. Local reporters started calling. Apparently, someone on the council had leaked a portion of the report. The headline hit the Old Shore Gazette the next morning. HOA leader accused of orchestrating campaign against veteran-owned marina. Public opinion flipped overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't just the guy with the noisy boats. I was the small business owner being hunted by the local Karen-in-chief. Messages poured in. Support. Offers to volunteer. Former HOA members who'd quit the board now wanted to testify. Karen, meanwhile, went into PR overdrive. She held a town hall in the Bay Point clubhouse, really just a meeting of HOA loyalists, and tried to spin the story. Claimed I was using military service to shield illegal activities, that I was over-commercializing the Bay, and, most laughably, that I had ties to foreign developers. Julia watched the video of her speech and smiled. That right there? That's slander. Add another count. By the end of the week, we filed the official civil lawsuit, Michael Brady versus Bay Point Lakes HOA, Karen Sander, Glenn Sander, and affiliated parties. The charges were brutal: defamation, business interference, fraudulent representation, harassment, malicious damage to property, and conspiracy to commit tortious interference. Total damages sought $5 million. And we weren't done. The day after the lawsuit went public, the police, now working with a court-approved warrant, entered the HOA office to seize financial records. One of the officers who'd responded to the marina sabotage recognized Karen's voice on the surveillance footage. It wasn't definitive proof, but it gave them cause to dig deeper. Karen didn't know it yet, but she was standing on a cliff, and the ground was starting to give. The court date was set for early September, and in the weeks leading up to it, Bay Point turned from a quiet coastal enclave into a scandal-ridden pressure cooker. HOA board meetings became war zones. Karen's carefully manicured image as the community's protector of peace cracked under the weight of subpoenas, depositions, and mounting questions from residents who wanted to know why their HOA dues were being used to wage a personal vendetta. Julia and I spent almost every evening in prep mode. The binder she'd created, now so full it required a second volume, was weaponized with affidavits, inspection reports, HOA budget misuse, and copies of Karen's emails that ranged from delusional to outright malicious. Her favorite phrase, apparently, was, "Make the marina a cautionary tale." We intended to make her the cautionary tale, but the most damning piece of evidence came from an unexpected source: the marina's own surveillance footage. I was reviewing archived video from the night of the vandalism again, the one where two hooded figures had cut the dock lines, when I noticed something I hadn't before. At one point, around 2:17 a.m., one of them stepped into the spill light just enough for the camera to catch a partial face profile. It wasn't clear enough to be conclusive, but Julia ran it through enhancement software with a tech she knew from her prosecutor days. And there it was, the faint glint of glasses, a distinctive earring, and the way she tucked her chin. It was Karen. We submitted the enhanced footage as part of a supplemental evidentiary motion. The judge accepted it into the record, but cautioned that it wouldn't be considered definitive unless corroborated. Still, it shifted the energy. Karen was now not just a bureaucratic bully. She was potentially criminal. The first day of court arrived like a storm rolling in from the Atlantic. The courtroom was packed. Local media had shown up with cameras, notebooks, and the kind of hunger journalists get when blood's in the water. On one side sat Karen and Glenn with their legal team, 3 overly tanned, overly smug attorneys who looked like they billed by the syllable. On our side, Julia and I, backed by Phil Hargrave and 2 other former HOA members willing to testify. The judge, a silver-haired woman with no patience for theatrics, made it clear from the beginning that she expected decorum and clarity. "If you waste my time," she said, "I will show you the meaning of professional regret." Karen didn't take the hint. During Julia's opening statement, Karen kept whispering loudly to her attorney. When Phil took the stand and began reading from internal HOA emails, including one where Karen wrote, "If we can't get rid of him legally, we'll make the marina bleed out slowly," she stood up and shouted, "That's taken out of context." The judge didn't even look up. "Sit down, Ms. Sander. One more outburst and you're in contempt." The evidence hit like waves against a rotting pier. Julia presented financial records showing tens of thousands in HOA dues spent on legal fees that were never voted on. She showed Karen's fake ecological report was created by her husband's LLC, which had never conducted a real assessment. We brought in a real marine biologist who testified that the marina was well-maintained, legally compliant, and environmentally responsible. Then came the hammer. Julia queued up the enhanced surveillance footage. Silent, grainy. But there was no mistaking that profile now. Karen, in the middle of the night, wearing the exact earrings she was wearing in court. Julia paused the footage and zoomed. The courtroom held its breath. "Ms. Sander," the judge said slowly, "can you explain why you appear to be on the marina's private property at 2 o'clock in the morning on the same night several boats were sabotaged?" Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering frantically. I was doing a safety inspection," she finally said. "A safety inspection," the judge repeated flatly. "At 2 in the morning, uninvited, in a hoodie, with someone else in tow." Karen folded her arms. "I don't have to answer that. This is a civil trial." "Correct," the judge said, "but your credibility just became central to this case." Glenn stood up then, trying to redirect. "Your Honor, this line of questioning is speculative." "Sit down, Mr. Sander," the judge snapped. "You're not a licensed attorney in this courtroom." That's when Karen cracked. She stood, red-faced and shaking, pointing at the judge, at Julia, at the entire room. "This is a witch hunt. He brought this on himself. That man's ruining everything we built. You people don't understand. Bay Point is supposed to be exclusive, serene, not," she pointed at me, "not full of diesel fumes and sweaty fishermen and their boats." The silence afterward was total. The judge slowly removed her glasses. "You just admitted, under oath, that your actions were motivated by personal bias, not community safety or environmental concern. Thank you for your candor." Karen's lawyer buried his face in his hands. By the end of the day, the judge ordered a recess for deliberation, but everyone in that room knew the tide had turned. Karen had done what years of HOA complaints and sabotage couldn't. She'd sunk herself. The verdict came 3 days later. By then, word had spread far beyond our sleepy coastal town. Local blogs, regional news stations, even a syndicated podcast about HOA horror stories had picked up the case. Veteran versus HOA tyrant had a nice ring to it, and people love a David and Goliath story, especially when David has video footage, sworn affidavits, and a damn good lawyer. Court reconvened at 9 a.m. on the dot. Karen looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually crisp Ice Queen posture had melted into something sour and jittery. Glenn wasn't there. Rumors were already swirling that he'd gone upstate to visit his brother, which everyone read as lawyering up separately. The judge didn't waste time. "I have reviewed the entirety of the evidence presented," she began, her voice even, judicial, merciless. This court finds that the defendants, Karen Sander, the Bay Point Lakes Homeowners Association, and Glenn Sander, did engage in a coordinated, malicious campaign of harassment, defamation, and unlawful interference with a legal business. Karen didn't flinch, not right away, but when the judge continued, her jaw clenched tight enough to crack a crown. As a result of the financial losses, reputational damage, and emotional distress incurred by Mr. Michael Brady, the court awards the plaintiff a total of $3.2 million in compensatory damages. You could hear the oxygen leave the room. And the judge added, due to the HOA's unlawful misuse of community funds, violation of procedural standards, and demonstrated intent to target and dismantle a private enterprise, the court imposes an additional $750,000 in punitive damages to be paid by the Bay Point Lakes HOA as a corporate entity. Karen finally broke her silence. "You can't do that," she shrieked, leaping to her feet. "That's not fair. That's our money. You're ruining the neighborhood." The judge stared at her with an expression that could chill boiling water. "Ms. Sander, sit down." "No, I built that community. I cleaned it up. I protected property values. That marina is a blight, and he's a fraud. All of you are frauds." "Mrs. Sander, this is your final warning." Karen spun toward me then, eyes wild. "You think you won? You're just another parasite, riding on government sympathy. You and your little boats won't last a year." "Bailiff!" The judge snapped. The bailiff moved fast. Karen was escorted out of the courtroom as she shouted obscenities, her words echoing down the hallway like bad karaoke in an empty bar. The rest of us sat in stunned silence. The judge continued, unshaken. "In light of the testimony and evidence indicating deliberate document falsification, misuse of HOA funds, and potential criminal trespass, this court refers the matter of forged petition signatures and nighttime vandalism to the district attorney's office for formal investigation." That's when I saw the smallest twitch in Julia's eyebrow, her version of a fist pump. "As part of this ruling," the judge concluded, "Ms. Sander is hereby removed from all official capacities within the Bay Point Lakes HOA, effective immediately, and is prohibited from serving on any homeowners association board within the state of South Carolina for a period of 15 years. Phil, sitting behind me, exhaled loud enough to draw a chuckle from half the room. As we walked out of the courthouse, reporters rushed in. I gave a short statement, thanked the court, thanked Julia, reminded everyone that this was about more than just a marina. It was about standing your ground when someone tries to rip it out from under you. Karen, by contrast, was nowhere to be seen. Later that evening, news broke that she'd been officially charged with felony forgery, criminal mischief, and obstruction of justice. Mugshot and all. And the fallout didn't stop there. Within a week, the HOA board voted to dissolve Karen's committees and initiate a full financial audit. Turns out she'd been using HOA funds not just for the legal campaign, but for travel reimbursements, high-end lunches, even landscaping work on her personal lot. Residents were furious. Several of them, led by a mild-mannered dentist named Raj, organized a class action suit against her, seeking restitution for embezzled funds. The city council, embarrassed by how far the conflict had escalated under their noses, offered me a formal apology. They even proposed a partnership, naming Old Shore Marina as a designated coastal heritage site, eligible for future preservation grants and tourism promotion. And best of all, Julia handed me a sealed letter from the IRS confirming that the anonymous tips they'd received, clearly from Karen, had been reviewed and dismissed as baseless. No audit, no fines. Just a note thanking me for my service and inviting me to apply for a small business tax credit. Victory tastes different when you've earned it inch by inch. Still, I didn't throw a party. Not yet. There were repairs to finish, staff to reassure, clients to bring back. I was tired, sure, but I was also focused. The war was over. Now came the rebuilding. And Karen. She was finally where she belonged. No podium, no power, no HOA to bully on behalf of her imagined empire. Just silence. A year later, the marina looks nothing like it did when I first came home. The docks have been fully rebuilt. Polished wood planks with weather-sealed rails, new cleats, solar lighting running the length of each pier. We expanded into the Eastern Cove, added 5 more slips, and opened a kayak launch for eco tours. The old shack that used to house bait and mildew It's now a bright, clean visitor center with a gift shop run by local teens and a wall of vintage photos honoring Old Shore's maritime history, including one of my dad standing on the original dock, holding a rope line with one hand and a coffee thermos in the other. We renamed the main pier Justice Row. People think it's a reference to the Sea Justice, and maybe it is, but it's also about everything we went through to protect this place, to keep it from being swallowed by petty tyranny. And on this day, the marina is louder than ever, not with complaints, but with laughter. We're hosting the first annual Old Shore Coastal Festival, a community event Julie and I organized as a thank you to everyone who stood with us. There's live music, food trucks, kids doing kayak races, even a dunk tank where Phil volunteered to take the plunge in a full HOA uniform someone found at a thrift store. I told him he looked like a mall cop. He said he was going for redemption arc. I'm standing on the back deck of the Sea Justice, the sun just beginning to slide toward the horizon. A group of kids are feeding fish off the dock. One of them, a boy with curly hair and a pirate hat, shouts, "Captain Mike, tell us the story again, the one about the angry lady and the boat ropes." I laugh, shake my head. Maybe later. Go win that scavenger hunt first. I turn to find Officer Merritt, the older cop who responded that first day when Karen called in her bogus complaint, stepping onto the dock with a lemonade in hand. He tips his hat. "Place looks good," he says. "Thanks," I reply. "Took a few battles, but we got here." He sips his drink, then looks out at the crowd. "You didn't just save a marina, you pulled the soul of this town out of mothballs, made folks remember what it was." I nod. "Tried to anyway." "No," he says. "You did." Julia joins us a few minutes later, still in her wrap dress and sun hat, clipboard in hand. "We've raised $12,000 for the Marine Rescue Fund," she says. "Not bad for a bunch of people who used to think waterfront meant private turf." "We'll double it next year," I say. She smiles, then points with her pen. "You see that?" Across the water, a banner flutters over the city pier. "Welcome to Old Shore, a working marina community." Below it, the city seal and a note. "In partnership with the Old Shore Heritage Initiative." I didn't ask for recognition, but I'm not going to pretend it doesn't feel damn good. As the sky goes golden orange and the boats rock gently with the tide, I think back to the worst moments, the cut lines, the inspections, the courtroom. And I realize something. Karen thought she was protecting her view. But this marina, this coast, it was never hers to control. It belongs to the people who love it, who care for it, who fight for it. And as for Karen, last I heard, she was living in a gated condo complex 40 miles inland. No water, no HOA presidency, just a lot of angry letters to the editor in the local papers no one reads. She took a plea deal, avoided jail time, but got slapped with restitution orders and a 15-year ban from holding any HOA office in the state. Word is she tried to start a neighborhood watchdog group in her new complex. It lasted 6 days, but enough about her. The festival winds down. A local band plays a final set. Families gather for the sunset. And I, once a sailor drifting from port to port, now stand at the helm of something permanent, something that matters, not just a marina, a home.